Welcome back to episode 2. This is another spontaneous podcast. How are you doing today, Brady?
Good, thank you, Ben. So today we are going to be talking about the Constitution of the United States of America.
Revised in 1992, the most recent version, because we have not had any amendments since then.
Yes. So recently, in American press and news, there has been some speculation of whether the president has abused his oath of office and defied the Constitution as his role of the leader of the executive branch.
Yes. If you don't know what this is about, basically, he's having an impeachment inquiry filed against him because there are accusations of him speaking to the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, about trying to get some dirt about Joe Biden's son, because Joe Biden is Trump's top competitor in the 2020 election, and so Trump wanted to get some dirt about his son, so he went to the Ukrainian president, and in exchange for this information, allegedly, they were giving him, Trump was giving them weapons and military aid.
Yeah, so there's a lot of speculation about this and a lot of reasons why people think this is like a highly, like what's the word? A highly criminal crime. Yeah, it's kind of abusing his power as the current president already to influence other foreign powers to influence the 2020 election. And that, a lot of people believe, is unconstitutional and requires impeachment.
Yeah, and even in Section 4 of Article 2 in the Constitution, it says, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors." And this is where a lot of people have drawn the line, and this is a clear example of bribery, or whatever else you want to call it, and this is in direct violation of the Constitution.
Amid these accusations, more accusations have come out against the Trump administration, and as days go on and more hearings and trials are held,
are going to be held.
Yeah, and are going to be held. More and more information is released about whether this is an impeachable offense or not. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if they do go to court, this might be the first time we have actually had a president be removed completely from office.
Except for Bill Clinton.
Wasn't he found not guilty? Not guilty?
Mm-mm. He was found guilty. Well, he wasn't impeached because of the Monica Lewinsky thing. He was impeached because he lied about it, and therefore people thought he was untrustworthy as a president. And I think like Andrew Jackson, after the 17th president was also impeached.
Really?
I forget why.
But well, this will either way, it'll be a very big deal, and if he does get impeached, we're gonna have to see how Mike Pence handles the country.
Mm-hmm. And there could be a point where this includes Mike Pence, and Mike Pence could also be impeached, but that would just have to be completely. It would take a lot for that to happen, and then
yes, sir,
the Speaker of the House would become president.
Isn't that Nancy Pelosi?
Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, so.
Well, that would be an interesting
ordeal. Yeah.
Presidency.
Well, it wouldn't last very long. Why
so?
I don't think she would run again.
Yeah. Sounds. All right. Let's briefly debunk Article 1 of the. Actually, just start at the beginning.
Actually, one second. I have one more thing to say about the impeachment.
Go for it.
Impeachment is meant to be a long, hard process. and it's supposed to favor, or no, excuse me. It's supposed to, like, yeah. So it's supposed
Did you lose your train of thought there?
Yeah, I did. Okay. It's supposed to be like a difficult process, and therefore it will take a very long time. And it's not as much of removing the president from office now, because his term is almost up.
Yeah, it wouldn't make much of a difference anyway, since he's,
Well, but it would affect his ability to run again. If he's impeached, you cannot run again.
Yeah, but I don't think he would either way. Maybe he would, but since I don't know.
He's running again.
He might not, though. If he gets impeached, he might not run again.
If he gets impeached, he
can't run again. Excuse me.
Yeah, so
my English is off today.
Yeah, so we'll just see what happens.
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to briefly debunk every part of the Constitution for you, because we're that good at people.
Yeah. So Article 1.
No, we have to start with the preamble.
Oh, the preamble, right.
Come on, Brady.
So I will read some of it. So it's rather...
It's a sentence long, but, when you're talking about the Constitution, sentences are very long.
So I'll read it out really quick. So in, like, the big font, it's "We the People," and then smaller font, "of the United States." And then, so "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America."
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning. So, "we the people" means basically it's just a popular sovereignty where the people rule, they're allowed to vote and self-rule. The people elect other people to represent them, and they indirectly rule. So there's that. In order to form a more perfect union, Brady, you want to take that one?
In order to form a better union for themselves, a better country for themselves. Again, this was written after
1789, 1787.
After, it's not... I don't think that part's necessarily talking about the British in Great Britain. I think they're talking about the Articles of Confederation and the original.
Yeah.
And the original Constitution, and how they're kind of remaking it, because the Articles of Confederation...
They did not work. They were the original Constitution, and they gave the states too much power because it was a confederacy, and the federal government couldn't do anything.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Establish justice is so, like, the judicial branch, which we'll get to in Article 3, they they interpret the law. So it's basically saying we will serve justice to those who need it and to those who have deserved it.
Yeah.
Ensure domestic tranquility is basically saying we will have national peace. We will try and make the country a peaceful place for people to live, prosper, and thrive. And really just, have and live in a great country.
Wait, where are we?
We are on provide for the common defense.
Provide for the common defense. Okay, provide for the common defense. So, like, taxes and services. So, provide for the defense and welfare of their country. I kind of skipped ahead to the promote the general welfare. So they're kind of writing this Constitution to promote welfare and to promote the well-being of citizens. Promote, excuse me, that's the wrong line. And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity.
Basically, that means that all of our future generations after our founding fathers will still have the same rights, and they'll still have the blessings of liberty that are, said in this Constitution, and they can still have the same quality of living as their older generations did because of this amazing document called the Constitution.
And then do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America basically means just we the people, and then all the stuff they said, and then we officially establish and officially create this Constitution for the United States.
Yes.
Okay, and real quick, the Constitution is basically a...
in reality, it's just a simple set of basic laws.
Yeah, it's 4 sheets of paper.
Big sheets
of paper. With the basic laws of the United States of America on them. That are the basic structure and columns for our government.
And how it works.
And so it's comprised of a preamble, which we just read, and then 7 articles defining the 3 branches and basically just a structure for the United States government. There are 7 articles. The first 3 are about the 3 branches, and then the other 4 are about...
We'll get to them.
Yeah.
And then there's 27 amendments.
Yeah, 27 amendments. The first 10 amendments were...
we'll get to it.
Yeah, okay, fine. I was summarizing it. Come on.
Okay. So, Article 1. This is about the legislative branch. The legislative branch is about the branch that is associated with making laws. Every branch in the United States government has something to do with the law. And the legislative branch, which is Article 1, has to do with making laws.
Yeah, so the legislative branch is comprised of 2 houses. And this was actually...
Chambers, 2 houses.
Yeah, 2 chambers or houses. And this was actually a huge deal in the 1780s, or the early 1780s. I think it was just 1781. But it was a huge deal, where the 13 colonies were arguing over having 1 chamber or 2 chamber. And it was
bicameral or unicameral.
Unicameral. And what they came up with, which is known as the Great Compromise, is 2 chambers, 1 chamber called the House of Representatives, with currently 435 representatives, and
18 from Illinois.
18 from Illinois.
I don't know why.
55 from California.
It's based on population.
Yeah, based on the population of a single state. So
the more people you have in a state, the more
representatives you have.
Yeah, because it's based on proportional representation. And then we also have the Senate,
which is it's fixed number for every state. Every state, no matter the size of population, has 2 representatives called senators. And so, therefore, the Senate has 100 representatives. And this was a compromise for states like Virginia, who wanted a chamber with that, or the representatives pertain to the number of people living in their state because they were such a big state. And then New Jersey,
very small states,
a very small state back then,
and still is.
Yeah, still is kind of. Wanted the
Senate.
The Senate, or the fixed number of representatives for each state, because they were such a small state and they wouldn't get as much say. So yeah, and the 2 chambers together are both called Congress, a term you've probably heard before. Yeah.
And so let's go into the specific people that run these 2 branches, or chambers, excuse me. So there is who runs the House of Representatives, Brady?
Who runs it? Okay, so that's called the Speaker of the House, and currently it is Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, and she basically influences her side and the majority of the House to do what she wants.
Yeah, the Speaker of the House is a ranking majority party member. So, and then in the absence of the Speaker of the House, there is a President Pro Tempore, which is Latin for the moment, and I believe that is Brady. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
Well, I do.
Okay. Wonderful Google.
It is Charles Grassley.
And
the Senate the vice president presides over the Senate.
Wait, is the pro tempore? What does the pro tempore do?
He is the replacement for the Speaker of the House. When the Speaker of the House is absent, the pro tempore replaces
Okay, thank you.
Her.
Or him.
Or him, but right now it's a her.
And then moving on to the Senate, the Vice President of the United States of America, we'll get to more of that later. He or she,
He currently.
currently he, Mike Pence, is the deciding vote if there's a tie in the Senate.
That's the only time he gets a vote, but
Yeah,
he is the president of the Senate.
Yeah, he is the president of the Senate. So basically, Congress, I forgot to mention this earlier, Congress makes laws, and if you want to make a law, it starts in the House of Representatives. They come up with a law that's not a law yet. It's called a bill. It's a proposed law.
Can't they start in either house?
I think so. I've kind of forgotten. We need the scavenger hunt sheet. Do you have that? Do you have it?
I do not.
Did you not take it home?
Don't have it right now.
Uh.
Excuse me, we made a mistake. The president pro tempore is the replacement for the vice president
Yeah, that's right.
in the Senate. And so the House of Representatives has the power to make bills with money.
Yeah, that have to do with finance or
and
currency. Or
just like cool fun fact, the Senate is a more serious branch of the government. It's more important than the House of Representatives. There's more qualifications for the House. You have to be 25, live in the United States for 7 years, you have to be 7 years inhabitant of one state.
Is it? No, I think it might be 9 years.
No, it's 7.
Okay,
And
then it's
for the Senate, it's 30 years old, 9 years a citizen, and 9 years a citizen of a state.
so technically the Senate is a bit of a more prestigious role in the government.
And you serve for longer as well. You serve for 4 years longer. In the House, you serve for 2. In the Senate, you serve for 6.
Yep. So basically, they make laws and then they pass it on to the president if there's a majority in both houses.
No, not 2/3. Never mind. It just has to be a simple majority in both houses. So the bill starts as in the district, like that wants to make the law, and it gets approved by the district. Then it goes to the House or the Senate, and then it has to get approved by simple majority there. Then it goes to the other house, gets approved by simple majority there, and then finally goes to the president. He can either sign it or make it or veto it. And veto is basically a fancy word for saying no. And if he vetoes it, then it's not a law. But if Congress really wants it to become a law, it can go back. And if they both vote 2/3 majority in each house, it will become a law.
Yeah, so when a president signs it, it becomes a law in the United States of America, and it takes action. If he doesn't, he vetoes it and sends it back to Congress.
Yeah.
And one thing we'll get to later, it's called checks and balances. And one way the president cannot overpower the legislature is if the president vetoes a law, the Congress can if the Congress really wants it, it can override it by 2/3 majority in both houses.
In both houses, yeah.
And so that way they can override the president's say if they want. And in that case, that does not look good on the president.
Yeah. And so the House of Representatives has the power to file an impeachment inquiry. And by the way, an impeachment saying someone is getting impeached is not meaning that they're getting kicked out. That's a common mistake, but it rather means that they're getting formally accused of wrongdoing. Mm-hmm. And so the House can make an impeachment inquiry, but the Senate has the power to judge all of these cases, impeachment inquiries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is what is going on currently.
With President Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so is that all of Article 1?
That's the majority of it, but let's get to Section 8. This is where they talk about the powers of Congress. We're not going to read all of them, but the most important ones are to borrow money on the credit of the U.S., to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, to constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, which basically means create lower courts than the Supreme Court. We'll get to it later. To declare war, to raise and support armies, to provide and maintain a navy, to provide for calling forth the militia, to make rules for the government, and finally to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution.
Yeah, so Article 1 is the longest article in the Constitution, and consequently, the legislature is probably, well, they're all equal, but it is a huge part.
It is.
Of
They're all very big parts.
Okay, so moving on to Article 2. Article 2 has to do with the executive branch, and that is the president, the vice president, and all
The cabinet.
the cabinet and all of the departments, like Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, Department of
Education.
Education. I really wish we had that scavenger hunt, man.
So, Section 1 of Article 2 is about the President of the United States of America. So he holds his office for 4 years, and the Vice President does as well. So, that's basically, the summary of the Section 1. But the only other important thing to note is that you have to be born, in the United States to become president, and you have to be 35 years and 14 years a resident within the country.
So, in other words, the presidency is the highest role in the government.
Yeah, but they're all equal. Not like the roles, but like the branches. They're
But
all
yeah, no,
Don't get them confused.
It's like the highest quality or highest
position.
you can get in the government.
Yeah. Section 2. So the president is basically it's saying the president is commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy and of the militia of the several states. And that's pretty much it in Section 2.
Yeah, well, also in the executive government, there are things called executive departments, and those oversee their department and around the country. So, like, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so that's, like, farming and agriculture. The U.S. Department of Commerce, which is
Business.
like
economic.
business, universities, workers and stuff. And then
You get the picture. But
and
all
then,
they have
okay, I'll go through all of the
No, you will not.
U.S. Department of Defense, Education, Energy, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Housing and Urban Development, Justice, Labor, State, Interior, Treasury, Transportation, and Veterans Affairs. And those all have to, and like those departments all kind of take care of what they are, and like the U.S. Department of the Interior is like the national parks and national monuments.
Yeah.
And the U.S. Department of Transportation has to
Infrastructure, roads, like, stuff like that.
kind of thing. So those are all part of the executive branch.
And they all form together to make this thing called the cabinet, which advises the president, when he needs it, or they meet and they just talk about stuff.
Yeah,
so,
how to run the country,
Yeah, and so Section 3, so he basically all this says is that once a year the president gives a State of the Union address. You might know what that is. Basically it's kind of like an update every year. He gives an update on what's happening.
The state, like the state of things going on.
Yeah, and the final section of Article 2 is that you can be impeached if you do something wrong and are convicted of it.
Yeah, so Section 4 of Article 2 is what a lot of people are referring to now, and
for Trump's impeachment.
Yeah, for Donald Trump's impeachment and things going on with that. Okay, so moving on to Article 3. This is the final part of the Constitution that we will be covering in this podcast today. And Article 3 is the last of the 3 branches of government, and that is the judicial power of the United States.
Judicial powers.
Yeah, so if we didn't cover that before, the executive branch...
yeah, we didn't. They
enforce the law.
They enforce the law.
The legislative branch makes the law, and the judicial branch...
interprets the law.
Interprets the law and...
serves justice.
Serves justice. So, the judicial branch is like when you go to the courts,
Judge, it comes from the word judge.
Yeah, judge, the Supreme Court of the United States is the biggest court in the United States, and then other federal courts make up the judicial branch, and they basically interpret the law, and they make it, or they decide if a law in the Constitution is, they decide if a law is unconstitutional.
Or if something that someone has done is unconstitutional.
So Section 1 is the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in the Supreme Court, and this
Inferior courts.
Courts.
Ordained and established by
as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. So basically, the judicial power is the Supreme Courts and smaller courts, and Congress can make smaller courts, like federal and state courts.
From time to time.
Yeah.
And the judges will hold their offices during good behavior and receive money as salary, like any other job. Mm-hmm. And Section 2 is where it gets complicated, but, all that you need to know is that,
Basically, there's a Supreme Court for every state, and there's smaller state courts.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And
sorry.
federal courts. And anything to do with a federal law, you go to a federal court. Any crime to do with the federal law, you go to a federal court. And anything else goes to a state court. And then any really big issue
goes to the Supreme Court.
Can go to the Supreme Court of the United States, and that's a huge deal.
Yeah, like Trump's impeachment.
Yeah.
And then
that might go to the Supreme Court.
Then the final section of Article 3 is Section 3. And it says, treason against the United States shall only consist in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Excuse me. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or confession in open court. Pretty simple. And then the Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason. And that is the 3 articles of the Constitution. So just to recap, we have Article 1 about the legislative branch, which makes the law. We have the House of Representatives, based on proportional representation, and the Senate based on equal representation. And then
that makes up the Congress.
Yeah. And then Article 2 is the executive branch. We have the president, vice president, and the cabinet, and probably a couple other people that we're forgetting, that enforces the law. And then finally, Article 3 is about the judicial branch, which interprets the law, consisting of Supreme Court, appellate courts, and district courts. This is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series, debunking the Constitution, so you can understand the world that we live in, even if you don't live in the U.S. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I'm Beonby. You are Brady.
I am Brady. Yes,
you are Brady. And that is about it. So we will see you next time, where we will discuss the final articles, and the 3rd episode will be about the amendments and the constitutional principles. Thank you and goodbye.